And I think another thing is, I think culturally things have kind of mixed together a lot more, right? So it's no longer like you're just sports or you're
Yeah.
just, apparel or you're just like streetwear. So I think especially streetwear kind of mixes everything together. How do you think about like, building kind of Madhappy in that space?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think that we're pretty focused on like building the world of Madhappy around some of the pieces that have been there from day one. So this connection to optimism and mental health, this idea of like a California, LA brand. Those are some of our core tenets that really everything we do kind of around the world will tie to that. And if that means that we're doing a partnership, like what is our spin on that? And yeah, there are some things that we do for fun or that we think are super exciting and interesting and maybe one off, but we do believe that everything is in some way building the world. And
Right. We're here at the Madhappy offices. Peiman, thanks for joining me.
thank you for having me.
Thank you for hosting us. This is my second time here at this office. I remember it was maybe like 5 years ago when I came to visit the original Madhappy
Yeah.
offices. It was a lot smaller than this.
For sure. Yeah. No, I mean, our original one was like in one of our old apartments, and then we moved, a couple blocks away where you visited, which was like 2,000 square feet, and now we're in a bigger space, so
Nice.
pretty cool.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about, I want to talk a little bit about Madhappy, but I also want to talk about kind of your thoughts about kind of branding and kind of like building a brand in today's environment. Because I think it's a very different atmosphere from when you first started as well. Talk a little bit about, Madhappy. It was you were in college at that time. What was what started it? How did it start?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, we were very into this idea of, we grew up in the early 2000s here in LA mainly, and with a bunch of brands we love. And so I think we got to see this wave of brands at the time, let's say the Nikes of the world and Apples of the world starting to get super big, and then a bunch of the streetwear brands,
Right.
Early 2000s. And we loved that we were part of some of those communities and experienced some of the launches and drops and exciting elements. And so for me, I was not necessarily like into fashion growing up, but Mason and Noah, who are two of my four partners that I started with, they were always into it, and they had started a brand together in high school, and they were thinking of starting something new. Mason had thought of this incredible name, Madhappy, and when he brought it up to Noah and then to me, and it really stuck as this idea of a brand being represented just in the word and the name of it is pretty rare,
Right.
And I think that it encompassed this idea of optimism that we wanted to go after, and we thought that there was a bunch of brands doing different things, but no one had really gone down that lane. And that was it. It wasn't this whole super thought out thing at the beginning. So we just kept learning about that, growing into it, learning about that, and decided to see where we could take it. But
Right.
really just started as that kind of side project.
It was a side project. So when did you kind of decide like, oh, like maybe this is like a full-time thing?
Totally, yeah. I think for us it was, early on we were doing a bunch of pop-ups. We decided not to raise any money to launch.
Right,
And so
right.
I think that was
Which
kind
is
of
pretty
a,
rare, especially at
rare.
that time.
I mean, I think at that time we were seeing a lot of the kind of DTC wave,
right.
raise a lot of money, see what happens kind of
Right,
thing. And
right.
I think our feeling was, hey, like a brand, especially with like a true product, like one, it takes time to build and get to a great product and brand.
Right.
Two, they're not always going to grow maybe as fast every year,
Right,
right?
right.
And maybe it's different in some of the tech startups and internet
Definitely.
companies of back then and today. But I think for us, we knew it was going to take time, and also it was a side thing, so it was kind of nice in that way to just see where it would go, make mistakes on a smaller scale. I think maybe like a year in, we realized, hey, like it's going well. There's some momentum. We want to continue pursuing this and see what we can do, and decided almost by accident that, yeah, we kind of were doing it full time.
Was there like a specific moment where like you thought, okay, like we have momentum now?
Yeah, I think maybe some of the early pop-ups we were doing were just like bringing the community together here in LA and New York and a couple of the first ones we did. And
You hosted a lot of events.
yeah,
Right?
so we would do these like launch parties to open the stores, and even though we didn't even have that much product and it would sell out because there weren't that many units, it was like you saw kind of this wave of people come together and experience the brand. And I think
How did you like get people together? Because like I think those
Yeah.
launch parties were pretty iconic. I think,
Yeah.
especially early days, Madhappy. But yeah,
for us it really was. I think it was, to be honest, just like our friends in our community from the early, just growing up in LA and
Right.
having friends from New York, just from going to school and different things. And so kind of just inviting our friends and it spreading in that way. And I
Right.
think those early days, it's like, it really was that, just doing fun stuff and doing interesting things and putting the brand in a place where people could experience it. And it was also good because it was a time where on social media, you could share that, then thousands and hundreds of thousands, maybe people
Right.
would see those parties. So it wasn't just like super local. And
Right.
then also a time where people were like very against doing anything physical for retail, which doesn't, now it's like everyone has
Right.
stores and everything,
Right.
but we thought in apparel it really makes sense to have that physical footprint.
And then you mentioned, a little bit about how you were, you want to take your time in kind of building up the brand. Do you feel kind of any pressure at all? Because like obviously some of the brands today that you see, maybe in streetwear, maybe in kind of similar kind of product spaces, some of them are like really growing really quickly, partially thanks to things like TikTok and other
Yeah.
things. Do you feel kind of pressured at all there, or you're kind of not too worried about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for us, like, 2019, we were able to raise our first round and have great partners involved. And I think the ambition and belief in ourselves and in the brand continued to grow as we, went sort of step by step by step. And then coming out of COVID, this idea of, okay, well, we grew a lot during that time. Now we want to grow more on the permanent store side as well and have both sides.
Right.
I think the pressure is like more like internal, like versus like, yes, of course, there could be a brand on TikTok Shop and
Right.
it goes from like 0 to maybe 100 million in like a year, and that's cool and everything. But I think for us, it's like we think it does take a long time to build a brand. That doesn't mean that there's not like a hurdle of growth we
Right.
want to hit every year, and we want to just be a better version of ourselves each year. So if we're doing the right things, that should happen.
Do you think, I think one thing, I've talked about a lot in our off-topic podcast was this concept of heritage, right? And how a lot of brands, they gain advantage because they've had many years in
Yeah,
existence,
for
right?
sure.
Do you think that, that's kind of like a natural just advantage that brands have, or like is that really the only way of brand building? Like, what do you kind of think about, how to build that heritage?
Yeah, I mean, I think that in the early days of a brand, it's like you're doing a lot of things for the first time, building out some of your iconic pieces,
Right.
working with other brands to really build up your brand and have the right associations and some
Right.
of those pieces. And then I think if you're around for long enough, then you become a brand that you can reference back to some of the things you were doing in the
Right.
early days. And so, yeah, of course, it's like a great thing to have and you build over time. But I think, some of those brands have also not done as well. And
Sure.
so I think it's still, at the end of the day, it's not just about your sort of catalog or vault or whatever. It's like reinventing yourself in today's day and age. And even though we're a 7-8 year old brand, like we still today need to continue to figure out how to do that and build the brand for, the next 10, 20 years.
Right. I think one thing I'm curious to hear your take on is, brands evolve over time, right? And, first they start off really potentially very niche, and then they slowly start to become a little bit more
Totally.
mainstream. And oftentimes there's a little bit of backlash from kind of the original folks, or they want like the original designs, right? We have like the Colette
Yeah.
collab, and I'm sure people ask you like,
For
oh, we
sure.
want like, we want another version of that, right?
Yeah.
But then you also want to kind of move the brand forward. How do you kind of balance that, and what's kind of the thought process in terms of actually evolving the brand?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, of course, like I think on one end, it's like we do and continue to try to hone in on our audience and their preferences as a whole, not necessarily just for our brand. And then I think as a brand, we try to develop what is our viewpoint today on our graphic language or on the collaborations we're doing or the stores we're opening, and make sure those things match. It's like when we were younger, we didn't have stores, then, there wasn't like an idea of how many products we needed to have. And,
Right.
as you grow, certain realities and things become more clear. But, I think, the Colette piece is like a good example of something in the early days that was awesome, like helped spring our brand in many ways.
Right.
And a really cool partnership for us. And what is that today for us, and things evolve.
Yeah, I think there's so many iconic pieces. Like, I probably have like 15 to 20 hoodies
Yeah.
that are Madhappy, and obviously the Lakers
Totally.
is a great one. Pixar is another like incredible one. I mean, you've lined up all these incredible IP, but I think part of the reason why a lot of brands and companies and IPs were interested in working with you was you had a lot of meaning behind
Yeah.
the brand, right? And part of that was kind of the mental health focus. And I think one thing that was really interesting for me was, you've done a lot of different things in this space. A blog at one point,
Yeah.
a hotline,
Yeah.
that was one of my favorite ones. A podcast for a while, and now a magazine.
Yeah.
Like, how did that kind of evolve, and
Yeah.
was that kind of very intentional about like when to start a magazine
Yeah.
versus a podcast?
I mean, no, to be honest, like, I think the brand was born in a place where the name had so much meaning, this idea of optimism, this idea that there wasn't really a brand that talked openly about life. Mental
Right.
health is just life at the end of the day, and
Yep.
just health overall, and I think this connotation that, well, mental health is different than physical health, and we could talk about one but not the other. And I think 2017, 2018 was almost the perfect time for a brand like ours to start, because you were just starting to see more people talk about it,
Right.
and social media was like picking up a lot. And so kind of some of these avenues were open for that to be possible. And
Right.
I think for us, it was like a learning process. It's like we never have set out to be kind of a charity type brand.
Right.
I think the brand is we've been very focused on how do we come through culturally, right? How do we do the right things in that sense? And then I think we'll have a bigger impact than if we went more the charity angle.
Makes sense.
And so all the things that we've done in mental health, whether it be some of the early events we were doing, like our block parties, to a lot of the digital stuff we've done, like you mentioned, and now the magazine is like just an evolution of things that we're creatively exploring, without having to feel like we have to do something forever.
Right.
And I think that's an important piece as we figure out, there's not one way to talk about mental health. There's
Right.
not one medium in which people only consume, and so just trying things and having fun with it, I think
Yeah.
is like keeps us interested and excited about it. And I think some things have evolved. I think we loved some of the early events that we were doing, and now we have at least one event a month in our stores, and our stores are a place now that basically every day is an event, because there's a cafe, and
Right.
there's experiences for new launches all the time. And then as we think about the larger side, actually this May 8th, so in 8 days from now, we're hosting like this large scale, like one night
Right.
mini festival at the Santa Monica Pier, where we're doing games, rides, food, everything. And so I think for us, it's an evolution of some of those early parties in our stores. It's like now this 2,000 person event we're doing
Right.
next week. And so continually trying to evolve that is our goal, and doing things that are fun, that continue to build the brand and community and excitement for us to keep doing it and keep working on it.
Makes sense. Do you think, I think you mentioned, like 2017 era was like the right time for
Yeah.
you guys. If you were, thinking about relaunching Madhappy today, would it be like totally different? Would you kind of have a similar type of playbook?
No, I mean, I think like I think I don't even know necessarily the playbook of today, but I think it's all time based, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, anytime you get advice from anyone, it's like so context related. So much of it is timing. I think it would be
Right.
very hard for us to launch Mad Happy all over again.
Right.
Certain things have to be in certain places for everything to sort of serendipitously work out.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. And then I think one thing I want to get your take on that is this idea of, in a lot of brands in the past, there's a lot of very iconic brands or iconic pieces, right?
Yeah.
The Jordan brand, right? The Air Force Ones, right? Like just individual pieces and or brands that are very iconic,
Yeah.
which seem somewhat harder to build today, partially because of the context, right? One is, things like TikTok with social media, the hype cycle is faster and faster. And then two, it tends to be a lot more fragmented.
Totally.
And then, in the past, you had TV, which aligned a lot more people to one single channel, right? And so I think one of the things that I found really interesting was there's this company that polled a bunch of Americans for the past 30 years, and they asked them who was their favorite sports player. And Michael Jordan took like reign from the majority of the time, but I think what was interesting was the concentration of people voting like the top person went lower and lower. So like at his peak, Jordan had about 20% of the entire poll, right? But now nobody gets over 5%. Right, so it kind of shows kind of how fragmented things are. Do you think it's actually possible to create something that's so iconic that the world kind of goes around it, or is that kind of world gone?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that, well, I think, yeah, fame, speaking of like fame specifically, I think in the past it was much more like hyper focused on certain people that were able to break through in some way. I
Right.
think that kind of has been shooken out across now. We could be in LA, but follow every celebrity across the world, just
right.
like at the touch of a finger. And so I think that has fundamentally shifted. I don't think that will take away from being able to build iconic brands. And even if you think about some of the brands that have started more recently, maybe like a Skims or something, in many ways is like that wouldn't have been possible back when Jordan started.
Right,
And even
right.
Jordan needed, to have Nike as his partner, right?
Definitely,
And so
definitely.
today's world is different, in which a Jordan or someone like that could actually do it themselves, maybe. And so different pros and cons to that. I think that, yeah, we're in a place where it won't ever go back to like, oh, there's a Michael Jordan only,
Right.
Or whatever. But I think it is possible. I still think, and will always be. I think humans. I think people are attracted to brands and people, and so that'll continue to happen. Maybe more fragmented, but I think also the percent of people that can now purchase things has grown a lot.
Right,
So
right.
all of that pie is much bigger.
Right. And I think another thing is, I think culturally things have kind of mixed together a lot more, right? So it's no longer like you're just sports or you're
Yeah.
just, apparel or you're just like streetwear. So I think especially streetwear kind of mixes everything together. And I think that's
100%.
kind of the beauty of it, right? Where you can kind of have commentary on all sorts of different pieces of culture, whether that's business, whether that's social, whether that's sports. How do you think about like building kind of Madhappy in that space? Because it's really hard to figure out, okay, like now who do we partner with?
Yeah.
What do we do next?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that we're pretty focused on like building the world of Madhappy around some of the pieces that have been there from day one. So this connection to optimism and mental health, this idea of like a California, LA brand. Those are some of our core tenets that really everything we do kind of around the world will tie to that. And if that means that we're doing a partnership, like what is our spin on that? And yeah, there are some things that we do for fun or that we think are super exciting and interesting and maybe one off, but we do believe that everything is in some way building the world. And
Right.
yeah, sometimes we make mistakes. It's not always the right thing, but I think for the most part we've gotten better at identifying that and
Yeah.
planning and building on that.
I definitely love a lot of the local kind of restaurants or like brands you work with here specifically.
Yeah.
And that's how, as an outsider, coming from Japan, I was able to learn about different, places, different restaurants. Now, whenever I come to LA, I always go to John
Yeah,
and
of
Vinny's.
course.
But that was all thanks to Madhappy, right?
Yeah.
So I think like, what you're doing is both, collabing with, brands here locally, but you're also helping spread their kind of message
For sure.
to,
Yeah, I mean, I think
yeah.
I think on the food thing specifically, like food, just like apparel is like a very kind of it's very like an experience and emotional thing. So every day, you kind of choose what you're gonna wear. It's like a form of self-expression.
Right.
Every day you choose what you're gonna eat or who you're gonna eat with, and so we always believe like food as like a core pillar of what we were building, and the feeling and emotions around food are typically positive ones, and so for us, we always had this view into, hey, well, there's these iconic places and they might be localized in terms of where you could actually eat the food, but
Right.
on a global scale are recognized and appreciated and all that. And so working with John and Vinny's has been great. And again, now with Pantry that we've launched in our stores, which is our cafe, it's an ability to grow and build on some of those food partnerships, and I think we've done a good job of that. And the Pure event, we have a bunch of those partners coming. We're releasing product with them. We have this 10-year hoodie coming with John and Vinny's there. So
Nice.
a bunch of fun stuff that we'll keep working on.
Do you think, Pantry, which is, your cafe, if you go to one of your stores, oftentimes it's there. When you do a pop-up, you usually have the Pantry with you. Do you think it'll ever kind of be as like a standalone like cafe restaurant
Yeah.
in the future, or
Well,
is that not
well,
really?
our first idea was like permanent stores. We want them to have like a food and beverage component, because really like that allows for people to come back more often. You
Right.
don't always have to be shopping, and you
Right.
can still have a brand
Right,
experience.
and you can hang out there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so I think we find that's the first goal, right? And so that's where we're currently focused. But I do think there are cool opportunities where the Pantry could show up, where maybe a full Madhappy store wouldn't make sense, And so I do think we'll have some of those
Right.
over the next couple of years.
So I think a lot of brands they start off like cafe, maybe some food and snacks, and then maybe they'll go restaurant, maybe they'll go like living spaces, right? Like hotels, like apartments. I think a lot of brands in like Florida, for example, they've built up like big kind of luxury kind of apartments and stuff. Do you kind of ever imagine kind of going that far into your brand extension, or is
Yeah, it's a
that
good question. I mean, I think that there's certain things we're good at, which I would say like fall in like the products and experiences side of things. So anywhere that could happen, it's possible. And I think we still have a long way to go in just our stores and,
Yeah.
and building those out, and Pantry and building that, and continuing to improve our product and all of these pieces. And so, yeah, we hope to be doing it for a long time. And so I would say it's definitely possible.
Got it. And Japan. So I think last year was the first time
Yeah.
you did a pop up, and you've done it several times now.
Yeah.
Each in a lot of different places. And what's why
Totally,
Japan?
yeah. So is
Yeah.
most of the podcast audience Japanese?
Japanese, yeah.
Okay, well,
But
great.
this is
yeah,
in English, so
of
we'll have
course.
somewhat of an English audience too.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, it's the Madhappy brand to us has always been like one that felt very universal, like not just like to be an only American type brand, and I think we can bring our vibe and what Madhappy is to the world,
Right.
and for us, like Asia specifically and Japan specifically, like felt like a natural extension, and still pretty close relatively to LA. There's a lot of brands that we admire that kind of had Japan as their first overseas market as well, and so for us, like it was more partner focused. Like, do we find, is there a partner that we align with well there, and we're lucky to have them, and I think very excited about this permanent store that we have coming there, hopefully this fall. And so really been a learning process.
Right.
It's going to be basically like over two, maybe close to 3 years of really working on it to get
Right.
the permanent store open, but super awesome.
Yeah, I mean it is definitely rare. I think most brands start off UK because it's English speaking,
Yeah.
right? To go from here to Japan, it
Totally.
does seem a pretty big leap.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good question. I mean, I think like for us, I mean, we love the UK as well. So I'd say like it's more just like what order will we go in,
Sure.
and there's different pros and different cons, but I think we want to be in all those places, and we think Japan builds on that, and we think that it's just an exciting time to be there.
Yeah. How's it like, because you visited Japan several times,
Yeah.
come research. What were kind of like things you didn't expect, things you're like, oh wow, like this is different, like this is not what I expected.
So I mean, this August will be like 3 years since I first visited. So that one time it was me, Noah,
Yeah.
if you remember, and Haley, and I think the first time I visited was the most eye-opening for sure. It's just like I had never been to Japan, and I had
Right.
never been to a country that felt. It was also kind of during COVID, so
Right.
it was like very peaceful and
Yes.
quiet, and not many tourists,
Right,
which
right.
very different than now when I go.
Definitely.
But I think it was really like just eye-opening, able to see somewhere that I've been a lot of times to Europe, and so I kind of understood that vibe and sort of atmosphere. But Japan has been awesome. I think I didn't expect how kind of just peaceful it would be, even though it's busy and
Right.
chaotic and different things like that. And then also like how wide kind of the consumer base would be, and just like people are interested in so many different brands, and
Right.
not only are there so many great brands that have come into Japan, but there's also a lot of great brands from Japan,
Right.
and being able to see a bunch of those that I hadn't ever seen in the US was also awesome.
Right. Makes sense. A last question for me, obviously Madhappy, a lot of really interesting collabs. Actually, this might be my second last question. What's your
Classic question.
What's your
This is
dream
the classic
collab?
question, but I think for us, like it's like we've done so many of our dream collabs, but I guess if I had to say one that everyone would agree with is like we would love to work with In and Out. We feel like it would be
That's a really good
cool
one.
one, and they've never really done anything, and
Yeah.
we're both kind of from the same area and have pretty similar beliefs and
Yep.
and ideas. So
I will say, if you do an In-N-Out collab, it would sell really well in Japan too.
oh yeah.
When In-N-Out they come to Japan.
Like the
from
one
time
day
to time.
pop-ups
Yeah, the
and
one
stuff.
that it's insane. It's like 5-hour lines. Like people have to get like tickets in the morning, and like
And
people
you come
fly
back
from
and yeah.
from all over the place.
No, that's super cool.
Yeah. No, there's definitely a lot of that would be really cool if you can do that. So my last question, I think, to you is, you can take this in a good way or a bad way.
Great.
What keeps you up at night?
Yeah.
Right now?
I mean, I would say like it's funny because someone asked me this like last night, and I would say that every day I feel like is different, and during the week could be stressful and could be tiring and all these sorts of things, and but I think at the end of the day, like I'm able to, for the most part, unplug and sleep and get good rest, and I care a lot about that. Being able to recover and work out, exercise, take time away from work, and so I'd say like we as a company are very ambitious, and we have big goals, and I have ambitions of my own, and just want to work hard and stuff. But also at the end of the day, it's like it's also my life, and every day I want to have be meaningful, not just like, oh, did I do a good job at work, but how did I feel,
Right.
and these sorts of things. And so I think I just judge it based on that. If I need to take time off, I take time off, and just recharge and continue to grow and build myself up as just like my person in my own life.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And then Madhappy. I think a lot of people have questions about the meaning of the word itself.
Yeah.
Is it like you can be mad and happy?
Yeah.
Like you can also be like super happy.
Yeah. Well,
Or is it ambiguous?
It's up for debate.
Got it.
I would say. So it's whatever anyone's own interpretation is, and I think that when you see the words for the first time, you have a kind of gut reaction of, oh, that means this to me,
Right,
and I
right.
think that that's what's special about the brand, and that's why I think we have been able to transcend across ages or demographics or countries, and so hopefully we could continue doing that.
Awesome. Well, Peiman, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for supporting us from the early days.
No, of
and
course. And
hopefully we could keep it up and
Yeah.
make you proud in Japan.
yeah, no, we're excited for you to do a lot more in Japan.
Yeah, awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.